Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing a slightly different video. This is a new little video series that I'm going to be doing, which is speed reviews of classics that I am reading. So essentially what that means is that I will be doing a video that is probably not longer than 7 to 8 minutes, where I will go through 1 to 2 classics that I have read recently. The 2 books that I will be talking about today are Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and the second book will be The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. The idea is just to keep them short and succinct, not go too much into the thematic work of these books, because these books are literature for a reason. You could write essays and you could do hours and hours on these books on their own. So I just want to try and keep them a little bit concise and just give you a flavour of why I enjoyed the books and why you might want to pick them up if you haven't. So without further ado, let's jump into The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. So this is the first book that I have read by Leo Tolstoy, by any of the kind of great Russian literature writers. I wanted to start off with some of his more smaller works just to get a sense of his writing style and the themes that he writes about. I was really happy that I started with The Death of Ivan Ilyich. For some reason, it's funny how, you know, when you read something and it mimics your real life, this is a really great instance of where that has happened. Over the past couple of months, I have been recovering from being quite sick. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about recently is mortality and death and how to live my life and how to make sure that I live a fulfilling life, more importantly. And so this really came at a great time, because that is what this book is all about. It's about coming to terms with mortality. It's about coming to terms with death. It's about thinking about the things that you have done in your past and whether they were the right things that you should have done. I personally don't believe in regret. I personally do believe that everything happens for a reason, to some extent. I don't think regret is a good thing. You learn something from everything that happens to you, and so you should kind of just own it, and you should make sure that you don't do it again if it is a regret. But the point I'm trying to make is that this book was really refreshing because it made it okay to think certain thoughts about mortality and death that I think often are portrayed as being quite taboo. And I really like that. I really like that it normalized some of the feelings that I have felt in the past couple of months as I've been sick and as I've been recovering. And I just felt like I was being heard, which was really refreshing because I did not expect that from this book. There is one particular passage that I want to read that really struck me, and I ended up actually calling my brother and I read it to him, because I said to him, I was like, if you want to know how I feel, then I'm going to read this passage to you. And I read it to him. So I'm going to read it here. They can all see that he is distraught, and they say to him, we can stop if you're feeling tired. Why don't you have a rest? Rest? No, he's not tired. They finish the rubber. They are all gloomy and silent. Ivan Ilyich senses that he has caused the gloom and he cannot dispel it. They have supper and go home, and Ivan Ilyich is left there alone with the knowledge that his life has been poisoned and is poisoning other people's lives, and the poison is not wearing off. It is working its way deeper and deeper into his very being. And he has to take this knowledge to bed with him, along with the physical pain and the terror, often to spend a near sleepless night because of the pain. And next morning, he has to get up again, put on his clothes, go to court, talk, write, or if he doesn't go out, stay in with every one of those 24 hours that make up a day and a night, each one of them an agony. And he has to live like this on the edge of destruction, alone, with nobody at all to understand and pity him. That passage has honestly done a much better job than I could do at describing how I have felt in the last couple of months. So when I read it, I did not expect it. I've been partially physically reading it and listening to the audiobook, but when I listened to that bit, I was listening to it and I had to stop what I was doing, and I rewinded it and I listened to it again, and then I got my physical copy and I read it. And I've reread it a number of times just the last couple of days alone, because if you've ever been ill, seriously or not, like it doesn't really matter, but if you've ever been sick and if you've ever had to be around other people when you're sick, which most people often do, you feel like you are a burden on those people. And not only do you have to think about yourself, you also unfortunately and fortunately have to think about the people around you and the way that your behavior can bring those people down. And so you have this dual responsibility, not only to those people, but to yourself as well. And when you're sick and you're fed up, that's the last thing that you want to do. The last thing that you want to have to do is be upbeat and be happy, or like feign happiness when you're feeling crap and you just want to stay in bed and you just don't want to go out because you just feel so debilitated by the fact that you can't do anything. And I think the way that he writes it in just such a kind of conversational way just makes it feel even more impactful, because those 2 paragraphs that I just read, that's just him, you know, those are just his thoughts, right? And he's just recounting them. But it just gives you a sense of what is going through someone's head when they're going through that sort of thing, when they're experiencing that sort of thing. I don't think I could ever put into words how much those 2 paragraphs really mean to me, because like I said, it made me feel heard and it made me feel seen, and I really appreciate Tolstoy for that. And because of that, I'm really excited to read more of his other stuff, because I think his writing is beautiful. I don't think it's not flowery, it's just very brutal, to be honest. Weirdly, it kind of reminds me of Cormac McCarthy in certain ways. I don't know why. Their writing is very different, but it gives me those types of vibes for some bizarre reason. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think I might actually end up giving it a 5. But I think it's one of those books that if you read it at a certain point in your life, you will get a lot from it. The next book that I read is from another kind of classic literature author, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So as a disclaimer, I did read this. I studied it when I was at school. Absolutely hated it because I hate the way they teach literature at school. I've said this many times on my channel now. I just really don't like the way that we learn about literature in a school environment in the UK. It sucks. They make you hate books that really are incredible. And so I'm so glad that I ended up picking up Pride and Prejudice, because I have got a newfound appreciation and respect for Jane Austen as a writer. And I think it's one of those books that everybody should read at some point in their life, because even though it was written, you know, over 100, 200 years ago, it is one of those books that will always stay relevant to society, I think, because even though obviously society has advanced and regressed in certain ways as well, in the last 100, 200 years, the rules between men and women are still fairly similar to what we see in Pride and Prejudice. Different, but there are certain similarities that I really enjoyed. Not only does the social commentary provide an interesting perspective to us as a modern reader, but the other thing that I really liked is obviously the character work, which is often how this commentary is personified, I guess, in the story. And I love how we have these really kind of contrasting characters. I love that we have Jane, who is very quiet, very beautiful, very quiet, doesn't really like to rock the boat. And then we have Elizabeth, intelligent, well-read, but she's not shy to voice her opinion. We have Bingley, who's a bit goofy, a bit like simple in certain ways. And then we have Darcy, who's the complete antithesis of that. We have Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. I love Mr. Bennet. I have to say I got a new deep found appreciation of Mr. Bennet. I tabbed quite a lot of his quotes. I think his quotes are some of the most telling. And I also think he's just hilarious. Like, I laughed out loud in a number of instances where he speaks. Again, you contrast him with his bizarre wife, Mrs. Bennet, is fun in itself, because you see these two wildly different personalities clashing quite a few times throughout the duration of the novel. The other thing that I really liked is obviously kind of this whole discussion around like virtues and vices, and how you expect people to fall into certain buckets and then they actually end up being the complete antithesis of that, and how people end up embodying the things that they don't necessarily want to be embodying. And I really liked how it turns certain things on its head in a way that is really refreshing and really like quite surprising, but in a really pleasant way. I also think that Austen writes really subtly. Like, there is this undercurrent of like inequality throughout the book, gender inequality throughout the book, but it's never, again, like done in a way that is to make a statement. I guess that's a symptom of the time that she was writing in. But even reading it today, like, it's just, you don't have to look for it because it's obviously there. Like, the world that we're in is obviously a very unjust world in some ways towards women. But it's again, it never feels like she's trying to necessarily make like a political statement with it, even though she might have been. I don't actually know that much about Jane Austen. So Evie, if you're watching this, please let me know. I really like that the whole book is basically just like this commentary on like how society works. Not about how it should be changed, not about how it was before. It's like, these are the hard facts. This is what it's like to be a woman in this situation, in this time. And this is it. They don't have any other options. This is it. This is the reality. And it's fascinating. The other person I'm just going to mention before I end this video is Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is just honestly one of the funniest characters. I mean, obviously he's a very tragic character in certain ways, but his lines and just some of the stuff that he comes out with is just like, it's hilarious. Like, I laughed out loud. I actually ended up watching the Pride and Prejudice film for the millionth time after I finished the book, and I got a deeper appreciation of the film because, you know, now I kind of had a much clearer kind of comparison point. But the actor who plays Mr. Collins in the movie with Keira Knightley is just, it's chef's kiss. So good. I laughed out loud multiple times. And again, I think he's a really good example of what ignorance is personified. I ended up giving this book obviously a 5 stars. I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I probably would have given it like a 2, because again, like we didn't really learn to really appreciate the book. But as an adult, somebody who's much more mature, and I've had my own life experiences, it's phenomenal. And I think Austen for sure is definitely becoming a favorite classical author of mine. So there we have it. Those are 2 reviews of 2 classics that I've read recently. Let me know if you like this idea, or if there are any other classics that you would like me to pick up or that you would recommend, because I am all ears. I want to be reading a lot more classics this year, and I already have, actually, to be fair. I've read quite a few. I want to keep that up as I continue to read the fantasy and the sci-fi and all the other stuff that I love reading. So let me know if you've read them. If you have any questions, let me know as well. And otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Stay safe, take care everybody, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.